Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We have some special guests on the line this morning. We have my brother from another, Bun B, on the line. What up, Bun?
Bun B.
What up, Envy?
Always
nice ride you show, bro.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We also have LaTosha Brown on the line. Good morning.
Good morning.
Peace, Queen.
And we also have our guy, Dave Mays. Welcome back, Dave.
Dave Mays.
Good morning, gentlemen, ladies, everyone.
Now we're back for another year at the Hip Hop Political Education Summit. Every year, Dave Mays does something around hip hop and summits and political and giving back and giving people knowledge. So what are we doing this year, Dave Mays?
Well, this is an outgrowth of the Hip Hop Week started in Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee, 2 years ago that I worked with last year when I came to see you guys. But we've created a new organization and a new event, which is the Hip Hop Political Education Summit, taking on voter suppression that's happening later today, live. It's a live stream. Anybody can tune in from 12 noon to 7 p.m. It's great if you can go register at hiphoppoliticaled.com. But basically, this is a call to action for the hip hop community. Really, I woke up a month or two ago feeling like with all the stuff that's going on out here socially and politically, that hip hop needs a stronger voice. In a sense, you can say before there was Black Lives Matter, there was hip hop. Hip hop was Black Lives Matter in the late 80s, throughout the 90s, in terms of being that movement to give voice to all of the exact same issues that are finally making it into the mainstream discourse recently. And so, although hip hop has changed a lot over the years, and there are still many people out here that do have a voice, it feels like this is really a time in our lives where we need to kind of step up and get more involved in this movement so that hip hop isn't marginalized during this critical time. So I called up some folks, some leadership in the community, and asked them if they would get together with me and hold this summit. Bakari Katwana is the co-organizer with me, as well as LaTosha Brown from Black Voters Matter. Bun is one of the people speaking on it. And we decided to take on the issue of voter suppression with this first summit. And we feel that's just a critical issue right now. That one that affects the hip hop community, in very specific ways, and that people need to be educated about. So we have an incredible lineup of people all day tomorrow, different panels and speakers and performances and interactive components for folks who want to, later today, by the way, I'm sorry, who will be sharing a lot of information and knowledge on what we can do to combat the issue of voter suppression.
Hey, Bun, I want to ask you, what relationship do you think hip hop and politics have?
Oh, we have a very close symbiotic relationship. Chuck D said a long time ago that hip hop was the CNN for the hood. And I think for us, hip hop historically, we've been a little bit detached from the process, right? Especially for entertainers, we don't really deal with a lot of the things that the average working class person has to deal with in this country personally, but we have a connection to it because the majority of our base exists in those conditions, and the majority of us come from those conditions. And I think what happens is that hip hop, which becomes the point of entry for most young Black people in this country to everything that concerns them, has kind of shifted the gears recently when it comes to politics, to try to give people a frame of reference for what's happening politically in this country, and to try to, I guess, be a voice of it, right? Like try to explain it, break it down to layman's terms. Black people for many years have been somewhat indifferent. Young Black people, I would say within the last 25, 30 years, have been a little bit indifferent to politics because, well, for one, the conversation really only happens every 4 years, but the politics that concern most of us on a daily basis happen all the time, right? So for me, it's not just about bringing attention to this presidential campaign, which obviously is something that everyone needs to have a level of concern about, but it's really more about local politics. People always say, I don't see anybody, worth voting for, and I can understand that. But the way that we get to that is by lifting people up from the bottom of the process. So good city councilmen become good mayors become good state reps, state senators, and eventually potentially presidential candidates. And, there's so much misinformation and disinformation that exists within social media. When I talk to people about voting right now, the main thing I hear back is, man, I don't trust nobody, right? And that's done on purpose, right? That's a concerted effort to make people indifferent or not, mistrusting the process. And so as a person that I know has a level of influence with people, I build up a trust factor with my base. And usually when I say, hey, we need to be doing this, most people, follow my lead. And so right now I feel like this is something that we need to be engaged in. And I'm hoping that my brothers and sisters follow our lead on this one and get active.
LaTosha, let me ask you a question. Bun B just mentioned people feel like they don't have anybody that they want to vote for, who they're excited for. So with this critical election coming up now, how do you respond when people say, I don't like either candidate?
There's a couple of things that we do. We talk about, as we do our work, we center our work and not around, I think that's part of the problem. We're centering this work around the candidates of political parties. This ain't about a popularity contest of who we like the most, right? This is literally about power. And fundamentally, we got to shift the conversation instead of being about participation to power. So when we talk to folks and say, and they're young folks or people on the street that say that they don't trust the process, we're not trying to evangelize them. We say, we understand how you feel, because I felt that way too, right? And we literally, so what we shift the conversation is, well, what is it that you care about? And I have never met, we don't even tell people, we don't even say the word apathetic, because I haven't met any Black folks that don't care about something. And so fundamentally for us, it is, I'm asking, what do you care about? And if you listen, if you humble yourself enough to listen long enough, and literally you can back out, you can actually help them make a connection. Part of the reason people feel powerless because it was designed for them to feel powerless. So if you center them as part of the power and make the connection, that's a different kind of conversation. So even when we were doing work in Alabama, this one about Doug Jones and Roy Moore race, which was a Senate race that was flipped from a Republican for 25 years to a Democratic race. Literally our commercial said, this ain't about the Democrats, this ain't about the Republicans, this ain't about him, this ain't about him, this is about us. And so fundamentally, I think when we're talking to folks, one, we're truthful and honest with them that voting is not the panacea, it's gonna solve all the issues, but it is a point and a tactical strategy of power to reduce the harm in our community. Second thing, and I think it's something that Bun B said, that's related to, there's a lot of attention every 4 years, but the real politics are on the ground.
Yeah, we lost her. Hopefully she checked
out. She was getting high.
But until she comes back, I was going to ask, we were talking about it earlier. It seems like the Democrats really lean on celebrity a lot. They lean on a lot of the artists, opposed to sometimes what's going on. What are both of your thoughts on leaning so much on the artists, leaning so much on the celebrities?
Well, I understand the idea and the concept of it because of the platform that's afforded to us and the level of influence that we have to people. But just because you're a celebrity doesn't mean you're informed, So if you're going to follow, people from the entertainment community, I encourage you to do your research on those people and do your research on the things that they're talking about. Like, don't just listen to me because it's me. You know what I'm saying? Take what I'm talking about, go back and do your research about it. Make sure that you fall in line with what I fall in line with and vote accordingly. You know what I'm saying? My job is not to tell people who they need to vote for. My job is really to tell people to care about voting in the first place. That's the problem.
I was asking how you feel about celebrity. I was feeling that, I was saying the Democrats lean a lot on celebrity to push the narrative. And what are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, y'all want to, this is a whole nother show. This is a whole nother show. I mean, I got so many feelings around that. Number one, even at the end of the day, there's some of us on the ground grinding. At the end of the day, I'm like, at the end of the day, this is what I do. I'm a little upset with even the celebrities that will jump out, take a position around on some of the voting pieces, ain't talk to nobody on the ground that's doing the work, right? And the bottom line is, even if you're telling folks not to vote, you can afford to do that, because at the end of the day, if they cut off a lot of the safety guards, your taxes, you in a different kind of tax bracket, but I'm talking to and working with folks that we going to court with that's getting evicted. When some of these safety nets get cut down, our people are suffering on the ground. So I think that on some level, there needs to be some level of discipline, even in our community around celebrities. Like, we all got our lane. I'm not gonna come in, Bun B, and tell you what to do rather than spit a couple of bars, right? But at the end of the day, those of us that are on the ground that's literally fighting every day for power, that I'm not clear about why is it that that group, right, that why are we not literally talking about and undermining the strategies where we working our behinds off and sometimes putting ourselves in a line of danger. Politics ain't about your opinion. This is about power. And I can tell you the difference because I go to the courtrooms, that when there's a certain DA in office and another DA in office, that can make the difference between whether our folks get 20 years to life in prison. So we playing with folks' lives because we up on this opinion thing, that this ain't about your opinion. This is literally around fundamentally how we're going to get power, or at least how we reduce the harm happening in our community. And so part of what concerns me around the celebrity piece is it's not grounded. Oftentimes it's not grounded in the real work that's happening every day to the people who are most vulnerable, because literally when we see these courts packed with these judges, that's impacting our folk on the ground, y'all. When we're seeing all of these pieces cut out, that there's no protection for workers or for poor folks, that's our people on the ground that we working with every day. And so I just think that we've got to be mindful around, I'm glad you're a celebrity, you got an opinion, but that don't make you an expert because you can rap.
You know what's so crazy, Tasha? Like, even in reference to something that they're doing tomorrow, one of the reasons I chose not to participate in it is because I said that exactly. I was like, well, where are the people that are actually doing the work on the ground? Like, I'm tired of y'all talking about everything except for what our actual interests are.
Right, right. You know, I think it's because at the end of the day, that's easier if we do these sound bites. Because the truth of the matter is every 4 years, and I'm glad Bun B said it, every 4 years, there's always been this issue of rounding Negroes up. Let's round them up so they can vote. Right, and so under what we do at Black Voters Matter, we work 365 days out of the year. Because the truth of the matter is real power is locally. If you're talking about police brutality, you need to go after the police chief. Guess how he's elected? Locally. When you're talking about these court systems, that's in these states. You're talking about a DA can make the difference between somebody getting 6 months or life in prison. My point is that fundamentally, we're literally talking about power. This isn't just about what this election we're gonna do. It's really around how to shape it. Two things. One, how are we gonna reduce the harm that's happening to our community? And secondly, how are we gonna literally shape something different so that we can radically change all of these systems that we're on?
Now, I know one thing people are also concerned about is how to vote at this time, right? With these concerns about polling places, with the concerns about mail-in voting and all of that. So can we discuss that so that people who are listening actually have the information that they need?
Yes, they can actually, if you are, the first thing you need to do is check your status right now. We want you to check your status. You can come to our website, www.blackvotersmatter.org/vote. You can actually find out if you're registered. If you're not registered, there's a link on there where you can register right then, and you can find out your early voting date. The second thing is if you're registered, you can vote early. We're telling everybody to vote early. We got to see this election. This isn't about just the two candidates. We are not in a position that we can leave any power on the table. Ultimately, we got to get it. Whatever it is that's going to help provide some protection to our communities, we've got to do that. And so we need folks to come out and vote early. You know, the third thing is that it's not just this conversation around this individual voting. We have to vote collectively. Whenever we work together, y'all, we win. We have shown that, we've demonstrated. That's literally why there's been so much effort to suppress the vote. That the fundamental piece around suppressing the vote is because folks understand the power, right? It's almost like if you're in a basketball game and you down a couple of points, you know that the referee is cheating. What, you just gonna go sit on the side and be like, oh, they're gonna cheat anyway? No, I'm trying to get it. Right. And so fundamentally, our folks got to think in that kind of way. We cannot leave anything on the table as long as our community is under attack.
Let me ask you a question, Tasha. When are we gonna stop putting the burden on Black voters to show up for Democrats and start putting the burden on Democrats to show up for Black voters, though?
I mean, I think that's a great piece. I say that all the time, but I'm not asking people to show up for the Democrats. I'm asking Black folks to show up for Black folk. Like, to me, voting is a tactical strategy. And so even when we're talking about it, I know the difference between, listen, we got a party. This ain't no regular election. We can talk about this like this is a regular election, but this ain't no regular election. There is a president in office who is adamantly, openly aligned himself with white supremacists. I'm from Alabama, y'all. I'm from the deep, dirty South. I can tell you the difference when you got folks that are in office and in power that politically align themselves with a white nationalist agenda. Right, that ain't good for Black folks. So we got to really see what this is really about. right? Not just about these headlines. This isn't about the Democratic candidate. This ain't even about the Democratic Party necessarily. This literally is around tactically, what do we do to reduce some of the harm happening in our community, put some level of mechanism protection, but also build something different. And my organization has been doing that. Like we're some of the ones that have been critical. We fight Republicans. We've been critical of the Democrats. We fundamentally say this is about us. And so as you're dealing with politics, it ain't about your best friend. It ain't about having constant loyalty. What it is about you making a decision of tactically, what is going to be the best decision to provide a little relief for your community and your people. And that's literally how we're engaging in the process.
I was going to say, when we go to these polls to vote, you always see, usually depending on where you're at, it's usually older white people, older white men, older white women at the voting polls. Sometimes you don't know if they have your best interest at heart. But how do we make sure that our vote is actually being taken the right way, whether it's at the poll, whether it's the mail-in votes, whether it's all those things? What can we do, and how can people continue to say, you know what, I'm young, but I want to help. I want to sit there at the voting lines and make sure people are doing it the right way, because we don't ever see ourselves in those conversations.
Now where I go, I don't see older white people.
Well, we got to volunteer, right? Like, so you can volunteer for, to be helpful in polling places, But I think it's a bigger level of engagement, right? Like, lawyers are allowed to be at voting places. Assistant DAs are allowed to be at voting places. So we have to put people in a position that allow them to be in those rooms. That's why we're talking about voting and electing and understanding the power of the collective Black vote. Because in order for those rooms to change that you guys are talking about, we've got to put people in position to allow them to be a part of the change, right? We can't just keep walking in these places and wondering, why don't we see people that look like us? That's a part of the problem, and it's the way to the solution.
Hey, Bun, how would you engage with, a brother who's like, man, I'm not voting. I don't feel the need to vote. How would you engage with them? What would you tell that young man?
Oh, it's not about how. I do it all the time. And I ask him, I'm like, how's the street in front of your mama's house? How's the street in front of your grandmother's house? You know what I'm saying? Like, local elections control that. What is it that you don't like about your life right now? Is it the fact that maybe you don't feel you had the right education and you want your kids to have the right education? Is it the fact that you don't feel like you had the access to things in your community that you should have had access to? Like, tell me what it is that you don't like about the hood, because I'm part of the entertainment community, and we talk about the good and the bad of our communities, right? And so the reality is that there are some things that, as an individual, you probably don't have the power to change by yourself. But collectively, as LaTosha was saying, if we collectively put our power together, we can enact change. But it starts locally, right? So we can't look for our lives to change just based on who the president is. It has a lot to do with who's on city council, who represents your district, who's the mayor of your city, who's your police chief. Most importantly, for a lot of young Black people, is the DA. I talk to brothers all the time, like who it is that you got locked up. How much time did they get? What courtroom were they in? Because you'll hear it in communities all the time. Yo, I just caught a case last night. Yo, who's your judge? I got Judge so-and-so. Oh, he gonna throw the book at you, right? We already know who the people are that, who prosecute us disproportionately and who give us time disproportionately. So we've got to be active and tell people, look, if you in their life, right, and you doing all these different crazy things, or you got people in their life doing these crazy things, whereas people who are not of color will get 5 years for their case, but your man is going to get 30 years for that case. We've got to vote on these judges. We've got to vote on these DAs. There's a lot that you can do to better the circumstances should you find yourself in that position.
What's some of the most harmful misinformation that you've seen out there? We see what's going on with Facebook and them having to try to figure out a way to regulate all of this fake news that gets spread and that people keep on reposting. But what are some things that you've seen that's completely not true, that's been really harmful when it comes to voting? And
Democrats eating babies, that's the first thing, right? Democrats eating babies, Democrats are part of these very secret groups, right? Yeah, I think QAnon is very detrimental to the process right now. A lot of disinformation for that, but just the fact of them trying to convince you that your vote doesn't matter. To me, I'm sure LaTosha has different frames of reference based on the work that they're doing. But for me, it's just the fact that there's so much confusion around what's real and what's not real, who to believe, who not to believe. And people just end up like, yo, I don't know who to believe. I don't know if I should be listening to the Democrats. I don't know if I should listen to the Republicans. I don't know if liberals telling the truth, conservatives telling the truth. There's a lot of fake news. There's a lot of deep state talk and all of that. And so people just get frustrated with the process and be like, you know what? I ain't even getting down with it. I'm staying out of it.
I do want to just share something. Even in that question, what you said, Bun B. I mean, part of it too is folks got to pay attention. We're talking about power right now. And so at the end of the day, people want to just jump up on what they hear, and we got to pay attention. At the end of the day, if you ain't clear that Trump is a racist, I don't know what else to say to you, right? I really don't. I mean, and I'm saying that because on one hand, what I hear that is really more damaging is that those manipulative messages, particularly that are targeted towards young folks and Black men, that in some ways that this whole idea that Trump is going to be the candidate to give money. Well, if that's the case, then why when he spent, there were billions of dollars on the stimulus package, right? 80% of Black small businesses, 80% of Black businesses didn't get anything. That's right. In addition to that, 50% of small Black businesses are slated to close in the next year. So y'all, we gotta be real. We keep hearing these sound bites and make that some folks attached to, I think sometimes just to be contrary. But the bottom line is when you look at the numbers, we ain't getting paid, right? When you look at the numbers, even when you look at his First Step Act, when you look at the Department of Justice, he said one thing, he let a couple of Black folk out so that he can actually have a lift. They paid $10 million for an ad on the Super Bowl, but still this same man, as soon as when Black folks were shot like dogs in the street, he couldn't wait to fly out there and stand in solidarity with them. This is the same man that literally stands with the police. So at the end of the day, we need to know, like what we know, what my grandma would say about the devil, we know the devil is manipulative. And so fundamentally, we gotta pay attention to literally, if you with us, you with us. You ain't just with us when you wanna literally create and sow confusion and chaos, but fundamentally, how are you literally advancing or supporting the advancement of our communities? You can't do that and then stand with the same people that kill us. You can't do that and stand and make these statements that you're not gonna have, you're gonna protect the white suburbs. You can't do that when you're literally undermining everything that literally protects our community. So we gotta call it what it is and know what time it is and stop getting caught up in this opinion space and really be what's real and what we know to be true.
Hey, Tosh, I agree with you, but you know, it's a lot of people who feel the same way about Joe Biden, though. They'll be like, what has Joe Biden done for Black people? They'll point to the 94 crime bill and the 86 mandatory minimum sentencing and the 88 crack laws. He's been in the Senate for damn near 40 plus years. What has he done to push us forward as a community?
I think that's a great point. That's why I said my focus of voting is about tactically who is going to be aligned better for harm against us. Because at the end of the day in the South, I've never had the opportunity to literally vote for the perfect candidate. I have to make a decision, a tactical decision on, because let me say, I ain't met too many white politicians that ain't racist. So let's not act like that's something new, right? So let's not act like that's not widespread in this country, right? Even among liberals, right? Racism is such a part of the fiber in this country that is almost normal. It's almost normal, right? But the truth of the matter is we have to have enough discernment to be able to know, because we know in the South, right? We have to make enough discernment that we know that when you got somebody that's talking literally the whistleblowing around consolidating white power and white nationalists and the danger of that, if we can't discern that, that ain't the same thing. Mm-hmm. I understand, I do think that we should be critical of everybody that is representing us, of anybody that we're voting. But at the end of the day, a decision is going to be made. And so you got to make a decision around what is going to create less harm in my community, while at the same time you focus and you organize to hold those folks accountable. Because a lot of the folks that even making criticism around this piece, are we doing work to hold folks accountable? At the end of the day, I expect that power is going to do its own thing unless we hold it accountable. So for us, it ain't just voting, it's voting and doing the work. But at this point, we got to have enough discernment, y'all, to really be able to make the distinction between those who are trying to consolidate white power, to try to limit Black progress, literally are aligning with folks that are killing us and shooting us in the street, from the difference of what some of the policy. I can deal with the policy. I can deal with the policy. It's a whole different ball game when you got somebody that's undermining and literally working to undermine and use racism as a tool to keep himself in power.
And I feel like with, oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to insert something.
I was going to say,
with this
Charlamagne, to your
conversation.
point, I feel like you know, about the point you're making about Biden is really relevant. A lot of people look at things that way, and honestly, for me, you know, it's been disappointing to see that you know, for example, there's been zero talk about reparations, things like that are not being addressed as they should be going into this election. But I think at the end of the day, you know, this is an attitude and a feeling about things that's been pervasive in my experience over the years within hip hop. And I think, you know, it's time for a change, and it's a starting point. You know, we have to start somewhere. Like everyone else has said, we're not going to have the perfect candidate, but if we don't change our mentality and start to think about things a little differently and the importance of getting involved, you know, I don't think we'll ever see the kind of change that we all would like to see. And you know, this spirit has been in hip hop for years. We have a piece that's going to play tomorrow that documents the history of hip hop and political involvement from its inception in the 1970s on up through today. I can't wait for folks to tune in later today to see that. And also in the words of Larry Hoover on the classic Resurrection album from the Ghetto Boys, you know, real gangsters go to the polls. And I think Larry had that idea right many years ago. So hopefully we can, you know, kind of infuse that back into the mentality of today's generation.
Which
So
was
break
gonna
down
say,
what's going on today. So break down a little bit what's going on today.
Bun was gonna make a point before Dave.
I just wanted to say, you know, we keep talking about Joe Biden and the things that he's done. We have to understand that there's a difference between Joe Biden, the senator, and Joe Biden, the political candidate, the presidential candidate. And the big difference is the potential constituency, right? So when Joe Biden is a senator, he's doing what the people of the state that he's the senator of want him to do. So those bad decisions that he made might have been in line with the constituency that voted him into office as a senator. But now when he wants to be the president, there are other people that he has to take in consideration, because he's not just going to be the president of the people of Delaware. He's going to be the president of all people of the United States. So he has to hear everybody out. He has to hear what people want, what people feel they need for their community, and he has to take that into concern. So not to make any excuses for anybody, but that's the difference between what a senator does for the people of his state and what a senator has to do for the entire collective of the United States. So I think when we look at Joe Biden, the senator, yeah, he probably wasn't perfect, and I get that. But I think Joe Biden has better understanding than Trump does of what the office does on a national level and who they serve on a national level, having been the vice president of this country. I think Trump was elected by a certain group of people. He felt that he only needed to cater to that group of people, and that's kind of what we as Black people have bared the burden of, the fact that he's been taking his lead from white supremacists, from white nationalists, and from people who have a high level, if at the very least indifference, at the most racist view of people of color in this country. And I think that Joe Biden understands that certain people are going to come to the table with things that he needs to address. And I feel like at least Joe Biden is willing to hear you out, right? From a meeting of like-minded individuals, whereas I don't think Trump is listening to anybody that doesn't come in from an ass-kissing perspective.
You know, I just to put on that, I actually think that no elected is going to act right unless we put pressure on them, and we got to build power. And I'm raising that because I think that we really need to know how critical it is. If we're going to hold anybody accountable, and we're going to talk about people holding folks accountable, then we literally got to make sure that we're stepping in the space to hold ourselves accountable, to hold them accountable. But I'm saying that because I do think that it's interesting to me that folks are talking about the crime bill, and I'm one of the biggest proponents, and I've been a critic around this, whatever, but we can talk about something that has had devastating impact on us, right? But we can ignore what's happening right now. Like literally what is happening to us right now, I think fundamentally, we got to know what we up against. And fundamentally, we got to know that this isn't just about a political candidate. We're literally talking about democracy right now. We're talking about a man that is trying to unravel every single system. At the end of the day, none of it won't matter, right? We're literally talking about a different kind of context this year. And I just think that it's important for us not to get caught up, because sometimes I'm hearing people and they're caught up, they get stuck on the sound bites. And I also think that there is an opportunity, we can help folks transform. Like when Black folks get together, we can help folks transform, particularly when their being is literally dependent upon whether you show up or not. right? It doesn't happen in all cases, but I can tell you, I can go down to Alabama and talk about George Wallace, who stood in the school and said segregation now, segregation forever. Came back in the state of Alabama as the governor, did more in terms of pushing some of the programs. Black folks elected him. My grandmother and them used to vote for him at the end, right? My point, whether folks say it one way or the other, that literally we really have to look at this voting thing as a tactical strategy. This ain't about, I'm like Drake and them, I don't need no new friends. This ain't about you picking your friend, right? This ain't about you. This is about what is a tactical strategy that is going to reduce the harm in your community, and also as we're building these new systems. And so it is, I'm sorry, there is no similarity. Now, if we want to talk about racism, I can go across the board. Yes, this will be a whole nother show, right? But if we're talking about literally what we're up against right now, this ain't, let's stop, it ain't no equivalency. It's a false equivalency around what we up against and what in our choices right now.
Now, for everybody listening that wants to tune in tomorrow, Dave Mays, well, tune in today. How can they tune in? What should they be looking for? What time does things happen? Break it down for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the purpose of this thing, the Hip Hop Political Education Summit later today, starting at 12 noon, is, is to focus on voter suppression and the issue of voting, that it's a fundamental right that everybody in this country deserves to be able to exercise no matter what their circumstances are. So we're not, this isn't going to be a lot of discussion about Trump versus Biden or, who to vote for. This is really about, making sure that folks have access to this cornerstone of democracy, the fundamental right to vote, no matter who you vote for, or if you choose to exercise that right, you should still be able to make that choice. So we're streaming live from 12 noon to 7 p.m. It's available on the Revolt TV YouTube and also on their Facebook page all day, and also on Twitch at the Behind the Rhyme channel. You can register by going to hiphoppoliticaled.com if you want to be able to interact and participate in the Q&A live session. You do need to register for that. But and I just want to mention some of the incredible lineup of folks that you'll see throughout the day. We have everybody, from hip hop icons and leaders like Chuck D, Big Daddy Kane, Damon Dash, to Rhapsody, Corday. I'm really excited. He's going to be participating to bring that young voice and perspective. And then we have other amazing folks like Dr. Cornel West, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, Mayor Ras Baraka from Newark, Senator Cory Booker, Congressman Andre Carson. It's an incredible lineup of folks that you'll be able to hear from and gain a lot of insight, knowledge, and perspectives throughout the day, later today, 12 noon to 7 p.m. Please be sure to log on and check us out, the Hip Hop Political Education Summit.
All right.
Word.
Well, we appreciate you guys for checking in. And again, thank you guys for calling in and checking in. LaTosha Brown, thank you. Bun
Thank
B,
you,
of
Queen
course.
LaTosha. Thank you, Bun. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.